I'll show you the overhead, and we will walk through this entire situation. I will explain prior to each video what you're about to see so that you have an understanding of how events unfolded. At 333 East Main, you can see that's the building there, right next to Louisville Slugger Field. Main Street runs east and west, while Crescent Street runs north and south. This is a street level view of the building that we responded to. Officers from the 1st Division were dispatched as well as officers from the surrounding divisions. What you will see shortly is the response from Officer Wilt and Officer Galloway's car. They will be coming up Crescent Street. Crescent Street runs to your right on the video. They will be coming from the river down towards Main Street. They will park approximately where that white van is. They will get shot at that location and then back up and exit their vehicles at that point. So I want you guys to understand how we talk about and how we train and prepare for active shooter situations. It's easy to tell an officer that you have to run towards gunfire. It's another thing for them to actually do it. Anybody who's ever been shot at can tell you it is not fun, and it doesn't matter how many times you get shot at, it doesn't get any easier. Plain and simple, everybody reacts in different ways to gunfire. We have to train our officers and put it into their character that their job is to go towards that danger in order to protect others. Our decision-making model that we use starts with our safety priorities. Our safety priorities are grounded in our ethics that all life is sacred, and decisions have to be based on who is in the most imminent danger right now and who has control of the situation, who can remove themselves from the situation. So when we prioritize how we make our responses, they are based on, do we have hostages or victims? Obviously, in an active shooter situation, we already have victims who have been injured, who are currently at risk of dying, as well as other potential victims who cannot remove themselves from that situation. Do we have other bystanders and civilians in the area who aren't the direct targets of that violence, but still need to be protected? Officers come next in protecting ourselves in order to de-escalate this situation, because we have a duty to respond and we have a duty to protect, and we have the tools and the authority to protect others. Finally, the suspect. The suspect has the ultimate say in every situation. We pray and we hope that the suspect gives up and complies peacefully prior to our arrival. But if they don't, then the officers have to take the appropriate action to make sure that they protect lives as they go throughout these events. The mission of being the police is fundamentally to protect lives and protect constitutional rights. That is absolutely what these officers did today or yesterday. You will see Officer Wilt's video. Officer Wilt was a brand new officer. He had no experience. He was going based on two things, his training and his character. And you will see that he never hesitates, even after getting shot at. This young man went back into the line of fire in order to protect others. And you're going to see that and how he made his decisions and how they ultimately protected other people's lives. Here's a quick chronology of events of the initial response by officers. 8:38, officers are initially dispatched, and they arrive on scene about 8:41. You'll see when we show the video from Officer Wilt, that they are immediately shot at while they're still inside the car, and these shots are fired in their direction. They do not know exactly where these shots are coming from exactly, but you'll see that they're coming from the front lobby area of the building. At 8:42, they redeployed, exited their vehicles, and began to ascend the stairs going into the lobby area of the building, at which time Officer Wilt was struck. Officers then continue forward in order to make an entry and respond to the shots. Officers rescue Officer Wilt, and I'll describe those events as they happen. Next, what you're going to see is, I'll give a disclaimer here, there is some graphic images, but all of the really graphic images have been blurred out, but we are trying to give you an accurate portrayal of the events as they happen. You will not see any victims from the active shooter situation. This is simply the encounter between officers and the suspect. This is a still image of the suspect inside the hallway prior to the event. This is a still image of post-shooting of the active shooter victims, where he then went to the front lobby and set up an ambush and waited for officers to respond. He remained in that front lobby where he shot at another couple of people who passed by, and then he waited and he lied in wait for officers to respond, and as soon as he saw them, he shot at them. That's where he shot Officer Will. Officers cannot see inside this area. It is darker inside than it is outside, and this subject is looking from a higher vantage point out onto them where they cannot see inside what they're approaching. You'll now see Officer Wilt's video. Officer Wilt is in training, and he is the one driving the vehicle of his training officer, Officer Galloway. You'll see them approach on Preston. They will park and immediately back up as they get shot at, and then reapproach after they reapproach. So as you saw there, after they received the shots and they reapproached, Officer Wilt got on the radio and started communicating that they had already been shot at while remaining calm and collected and getting out the proper information. Next, you'll see Officer Galloway's video. Officer Galloway was Officer Wilt's training officer who was riding in the passenger seat. He deploys with his patrol rifle that he retrieves from and moves towards the shots that were fired coming out of the lobby area of the location. What you will see is the continuation all the way through this event at this point. So Officer Wilt will be shot. You will not see that part on the video, as Officer Wilt is just a step behind Officer Galloway. Officer Galloway will then move across the lobby area outside where he is shot, and he will fall down and roll and return to cover on the opposite side, on the Main Street side. He will take cover there behind a large planter box and try to assess the situation and get some situational awareness of both his status as well as the status of the downed officer, and try to ascertain where the shots are exactly coming from. He received a minor gunshot wound, but he continues to stay in the fight and try to assess exactly where this shooter is. While he's doing that, he is going back and forth. He is also communicating on the radio, trying to get a good view of the shooter. You will not hear the radio transmission from him because he has an earpiece. You will later hear the transmission from the radio that picks up on the officer that walks up behind him. As Officer Wilt is there and other officers begin to arrive, they attempted to go up the steps to rescue Officer Wilt. As they go up the stairs and attempt to rescue Officer Wilt, the suspect fires at them, trying to kill them in their process of trying to save Officer Wilt. When the suspect does this, he breaks out the glass and shoots again through the glass, breaking it out, where Officer Galloway can finally get the vantage point to see where this threat is coming from. Once he is able to see the threat, he then engages the threat, shoots, and kills the suspect. You will not be able to see that on the camera just because of the vantage point of his camera is on his chest versus his eye level, which is a little bit higher over the steps, as well as the distance. This is not a close range shot from Officer Galloway. After the suspect is down, they will then approach the suspect while other officers are rescuing Officer Will. That is off camera. You won't be able to see that. You will see that the suspect is down with a rifle next to him. That is blurred out because of the graphic nature of that image. So just to give you a couple of understanding about a couple of phrases that you might have heard in there. One was, "Is that Blue talking?" They were talking about, are those other officers that are talking versus civilians. He also said we need to plate the officer. So he's talking about being able to get something between themselves and the shooter that will stop bullets, to put some kind of hard plate in between them so they can effect that rescue. I think you can see the tension in that video. You can understand the stress that those officers are going through. Response wasn't perfect, but it was exactly the response we needed. I think I would love to have either one of those officers ride with me any day. They did absolutely exactly what they needed to do to save lives. Once officers arrived on scene, not another person was shot. Not a single person received any further injury once officers arrived on scene, and that's what we're here for. So one third perspective on this was a bystander video from across the street that was taken on a man's cell phone. This will be from the south side of Main Street, just behind where Officer Galloway ends up at the bottom of the stairs. There is no audio that goes along with this video. So that video does eventually cut off. We did not cut the video off as the length of that video. So following the approach to the suspect, Officer Wilt was rescued by officers and transported in the back of a police car to University of Louisville Hospital, where he received treatment. Officers immediately, along with fire, EMS, and other agencies, entered that building and searched that entire building multiple times to make sure there were no more threats. When they did that, they also took medical supplies in and began immediately treating and triaging and transporting victims of that shooting. From our conversations with medical staff, it is 100% certainty that officers' medical treatment saved lives that day. The actions that they took to follow up after being shot at themselves, to be compassionate and provide medical treatment, absolutely saved lives that day. There's going to be a million stories that'll come out of this. But as they keep rolling in, one of them that happened that we just learned about a few minutes ago was EMS was treating victims, and they were short-staffed, and they needed people to be in the back of the EMS wagon with them. And a lieutenant from Metro Police got in and drove the EMS wagon so that the EMS workers could treat one of the victims on the way to the hospital. That's what we do, right? We improvise, and we make sure that we do everything that we can to keep people safe and take care of them. What you saw in that video was absolutely amazing. It's tragic, but it's absolutely amazing. There's only a few people in this country that can do what they did. Not everybody can do that. They deserve to be honored for what they did, because it is not something that comes easily. It is not something that comes naturally. Anybody who gets shot at reacts. For people to react by staying there, staying in the fire, and going back inside the scene, keeping themselves in danger, that's superhuman. Those men are amazing. The women that responded are amazing. The EMS workers, the firefighters. If you guys don't know, EMS and fire go inside that scene with us before we're able to say that it's safe. Sheriff's officers, off-duty officers, all came out and went inside that scene before we were able to guarantee that it was safe. And those actions absolutely save people's lives. And we want to focus on those victims. We want to focus on those people that lost their lives, that were injured. But we also want to recognize those heroic efforts that also saved lives. As I said before, this video will be posted in its completion, along with the personnel files of the officers they'll be available. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, the most heroic things at the peak of our career that we do are shrouded in other people's tragedies. As a profession, we are here to save people. And even though we saved lives that day, there are people that lost theirs. We need to honor and respect them and make sure we pray for them and take their families under our wing and take care of them. And we also need to do the same for those officers, because they're hurting as well. They're not just physically hurting. This hurts emotionally. So we need to make sure that we take care of them and we understand the sacrifice that they make every day. We'll turn it over to questions at this point.
When Officer Galloway is outside by the planter, where exactly is the shooter? Like, you had to pinpoint him inside the structure. Where is he? And was he at any point communicating with other officers or other officers on the other side telling him not to run?
So I'm not going to make a comment about any communication that happened, but he was moving around inside the front lobby area. So there's a front foyer where the elevators and things like that are, as well as some offices. And he was moving pretty deep in the structure. So when you open up the front door, the front glass door, there's a space with a secondary set of doorways, and then doorways that go to offices on either side with elevators. And so he was moving in and out of that space. So he was pretty far back in there. So when I say that, he went to the front lobby after assaulting the victims in the office area, and he could see out where no one could see in, because he's like I said, two sets of doors deep. When you combine that with that non-reflective glass, the sunshine, the elevated position, officers could not see inside those doors on their approach, whereas he could see out to them. And so that's why he was able to fire on them before they ever saw where he was. It appears that way. So that again was it was less than another 3 minutes. So it feels like eternity to watch. You can only imagine how it felt for them being there in that moment. These types of events are a little weird from the standpoint of time compression and memory and those types of things, but they feel like they happen like that. They also feel like they take forever. So yes, that was a tough 3+ minutes to watch while they waited for officers to get there and take care of business. Thank you.
I'm gonna make a quick, just a quick closing comment is just again to reiterate what the deputy chief and chief have said, but a giant debt of gratitude is owed by our entire community to Officer Wilt, Officer Galloway, and all of the heroic men and women on LMPD and the other first responders that responded to this. We thank you for your service yesterday, and we thank you for your service every day. As we move forward from here, LMPD and our administration will continue to provide information about the investigation as it continues. We know there's still a lot of unanswered questions. You want answers, we want answers, the public wants answers, and we will continue to provide that information as it is available. We expect within the next 24 hours, we will be releasing various 911 calls and audio tape of that. And then the investigation will continue, and as more information is available, we'll continue to make you aware of that. Thank you all very much.